Bon dia, bon tarde y bon noche. Welcome back to the show, guys. Thank you for coming to watch. Thank you for listening, for everyone listening onto the podcast version of it. I have a very lovely guest with me today. I'm happy to say that I'm balancing my men to female ratio on my podcast now. Nicole, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Feel comfy, cozy, ready to go? Yeah?
Cozy.
Awesome. All right. So first of all, I want to thank you for having a very kind of a Barry White, James Brown, James Earl Jones kind of nice sultry voice, because the fact that you're a public speaker helps with the combination with such a nice calming voice. So
That's
everyone
good,
listening, you're welcome for me getting a guest on with such a delicious voice.
Someone told me recently that my voice has ASMR vibes.
Absolutely.
And I don't know enough about it, but then I Googled it again and I was like, oh yeah, that. Oh, I see what they mean.
Ever need a side hustle? Just start whispering shit and
start tapping my fingernails.
Yeah, I wonder if you could like just do ASMR, but about like papimento stuff, so papimento words.
Ooh.
And just like whisper like Totolika, Trupial Cacho, and just see if people like work into it.
Oh my
Hey,
God.
no judgment. ASMR is your thing. You know, holla at her. Never know.
I can say Totolika to you.
See, there you go. Wait.
I can say Trupial.
There you go. My viewer count's going up right now.
Exactly.
So, for the people who don't know you, we, of course, as many of my guests, we went to school together. We know each other from school. And
No, we know each other via we know each other via random people, actually.
yeah, but we're still at the same school.
No, I went to ISC.
You went to ISC, that's
Yeah.
right. Then how the hell were you?
Those kids.
How the hell were you at Rodolfo so often then?
I don't know. I was friends with a lot of people from Rodolphus.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm-
everyone always forgets I went to ISC.
I'm truly super surprised.
And people at PSA are also like, yeah, but you were at PSA with me. I'm like, no, I wasn't.
You're like the nomad of the
Just
school.
like a little imposter. Yeah.
I was literally telling Fleur that, oh yeah, we went to school together. That's how
Yeah.
I know her.
No, you lie. No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was just, I don't know, visiting. I was very social. I still am very social,
Absolutely.
I suppose. Yeah.
And the way we knew you as the girl with the very contagious smile.
Yeah.
You always had a nice, big, beautiful smile. And then no matter what happened, you were always cheery.
Yeah. it's
So, but as all Antianos, we make our journey from the islands to here to where we are now. So tell us a little about that for you. How was that for you?
I think, like most of us, it's been a journey. I came here expecting I'd be here for like 3-4 years and then I'd leave. I wasn't necessarily planning on going back to Curacao right away, but I knew for sure, oh, well, I'm not going to stay in Holland because, I don't know, it's cold and rainy and whatever. And it's been 11 years. And I'm
So much for
gladly
that.
here. I'm not being held against my will. I'm happily still around. So I think that has been quite interesting. And I think that I hadn't really anticipated when I came here. I was so excited at that time to just leave the island. You know, I think like most of us, you're 17, 18, and you're like, oh, this island is too small for me. The world is so big. I need to go see everything and I can't wait to leave. So that was all great. But then I think that I underestimated because of that what it would feel like to get used to living here. So the culture shock for me was very, very real. And in some way, the first 3 years, I sort of got away with it because I lived on an international campus. So the culture shock was still kind of distanced from me. And then I went to do a second bachelor in Dutch. And that's when it just hit me like pretty hard, where I was like, damn.
You were just hit with poffertjes and frikandellen and OV, like left and right. You didn't know what to do.
Yeah, biking. Yeah. But I mean, I think that it's been tough. Yeah, in the past decade, there's definitely been there's a block of, I think, a good 4 or 5 years that was really, really hard and unnecessarily so.
And hard in which way and for what reason?
The culture shock part and the identity part. But if I start telling that, then we kind of already
we're jumping
straight
into the meat and potatoes of the podcast.
Yeah. But we'll get to that.
I definitely understand that's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's
Yeah.
because you're thrown into such a different environment you start to wonder who exactly you are or should be.
Yeah.
That can definitely be a little bit of a roadblock when you're also trying to focus on your studies.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of which, what did you come here to study?
I came here to study law. Yeah.
Okay.
So I did my undergrad. So my bachelor was liberal arts and sciences because I went to that international. I wanted to study in English. That was the thing. So I, because I went to the international school, English was my best kind of. I'm the most fluent in English, and so I wanted to study in English. Chose a university where I could do that, and I could do liberal arts and sciences, and had a major in law. So that was what I did, and then I went to study, do a second bachelor in rechtsgeleerdheid, so Dutch law, because I wanted to be a lawyer and blah blah blah. You need to do that. So yeah, law.
And
very dry,
and
serious.
From your studies, you actually went working for a law firm, right? Law office.
Yeah, I worked at a law office here in Utrecht for 2 years. That was like a part-time next to my studies kind of thing. Super interesting, intellectual property law, so that was really cool. And then I went to work not at a law firm, at a trust company.
Okay.
So, but I was doing the legal side of it. But it was very different because there it was like really diving into corporate law and all of that. So also very interesting. But both of those things were next to my studies. And then I stayed at that trust company for 5 years in the end.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 5 years. And turned that into a full-time thing once I finished studying, basically.
And where does your big trip to Australia fit in this this little roadmap?
So that was in 2018. Okay. I'm jumping into the meat and potatoes then.
There we go.
Okay.
That's also the reason why I wanted to dive into the fact of your past career.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into that now. You made a very, very big change in not only the field of interest, but also the format of work. So I'm using Australia as a bit of like a segue.
Yeah.
So tell us about it.
But that's the thing, it does all link together.
Yeah.
So really it starts with, okay, high school, you're trying to figure out what you're going to study. And my choice at the time is very interesting to me still. I wanted to go to art school or law school. Two completely different things. But I am still very passionate about art. I paint and stuff like that. And I was into public speaking and stuff like that. But usually in the format of like, you do like a mock trial or something like that. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll be one of those cool lawyers like yelling in a courtroom and stuff, you know?
Denied.
Exactly. I was like, that's going to be awesome.
Objection.
I object.
All those cool words you get to yell out at people.
Yeah. And like, yeah, honorable judge. Yeah, I was super into it. I was like, that's gonna be awesome. And so I made the choice for law school because it seemed like the wise thing to do. Because again, at the time I was only painting and I had kind of a simplified view of what art school would be, where I was like, oh, but if I'm a painter, I will not earn any money, full stop, basically. So I was like, okay, law school. So I came here, had that little complicated thing where I wanted to study it in English, went to study it in English. That was all great, had a great time. But then came the kicker, which was I couldn't actually become a lawyer with that degree because...
Ain't that some shit?
Ain't that some shit? So then it was like, well, you need to go study law in Dutch anyway. So I was like, oh, damn. So I went to do this bachelor.
You thought you had like a dope loophole and you're playing the game and the game was playing you all the time.
The game played me hard. Yeah. So then there I went, but I've never had any schooling in Dutch. I speak Dutch with my parents, but that's it. So my Dutch at the time was spoken like very strong, but my written Dutch and my reading skills were just low. So I went. It was a struggle bus, basically. First year I had to quit because I got negatief studieadvies because I was failing everything. Then came the whole mental barrage. I tried to complete that bachelor for 5 years, by the way, on and off.
I'm resilient, girl.
It was, yeah. I'm definitely like a dog with a bone with certain things. And I just had in my head, I was like, there's no way you can tell me I can't do this. This is impossible. Of course I can
Preaching to the
do
choir.
it. I can do anything. So I was like, I'm going to do it.
Do you also have the sense that when people say you can't do it, it just makes you want to do it even more?
It makes you want to do it even more. So people, literally at the time, people were like, yeah, maar, should you maybe stop? And I'd be like, just because you've said that, I refuse.
Just because you put it out in the universe, I'm going to step on your throat, you know.
But the only
Metaphorically.
Exactly. But the only one who lost in the end was me, because I pushed and pushed and pushed myself. And it turned into this whole mental health thing. I had depression, which is interesting because I am, for most people who know me, I'm the sunshine girl.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm
You've always been the sunshine girl.
Yeah. So that was such a complicated process of, first of all, that process of seeing yourself fail for the first time, because I've always done well in school and stuff like that, bit of a like nerd and just kind of breezing through. So for the first time seeing like, oh, are you really that smart? Was kind of the thoughts that started coming up, which was really hard. And then this feeling of, okay, but if not law, then what? Like, if I can't do this, what am I going to do? Like, shit, I've been putting in at a certain point, okay, like you're what, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the road out of high school. And what, if you're going to leave that idea of that future, what are you going to do? And then came, but I'm the sunshine girl, you know, like how am I feeling so bad all the time if I am always happy? I'm supposed to always be happy. So it was a lot. It was really tough. And it took me kind of hitting that wall really hard at a certain point of, you know, being stuck in bed for just weeks and realizing, oh, I need someone to like help me out. So I went to the Assert and we figured out a psychologist. I like let my parents know, you know, I'm having a tough time. I stopped school. And one of the things we talked about was, okay, well, what's the solution? How are you going to get yourself out of this? And I said, you know, I think that it's situational. I think it has to do with this study. Like, I need to feel intelligent again. I need to feel empowered and badass like I felt for most of my life. So I went to do my master's.
Justifiably.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, fabulous. What can I say? So I went and I did my master's in English again, flew through it, like with putting in like
so it's the Dutch. The Dutch just fucking tripped you up.
And I
completely get it. Like all my employees are Dutch.
Yeah.
And I constantly have to ask them like, hey, is it de of het?
Oh my God.
Is it de of het? Is it with DT or day?
Okay, welklidwoord.nl is my favorite.
Is that a thing?
Dude, yeah. Get on that shit. You just type in the word and it tells you if it's de or
I'm
het.
so fed up with that shit. For me, everything is DT. Everything. Everything is DT. Like, even like this, like pet, DT. Kat, DT. Hoed, DT. Everything is DT. Just,
whenever someone tries to, if I say like, oh yeah, maar DT, ik snap het niet, blah, blah, the word or like the phrase, het kofschip, just pisses me off.
Fuck the kofschip.
The kofschip is just the bane of my existence.
Fuck that
Laat
shit.
me. Ik wil niet horen over kofschip.
I have the same thing with like die of deze, dat.
I can't.
And people like, yeah, het is logisch. I'm like, no, it's not. Explain it to me.
Not.
Yeah, because you just kind of know. I'm like, just kind of know doesn't make it logisch for me.
Exactly.
Man.
Logisch for you, but...
And then I always use the Antiano like scapegoat of, look, I speak 4 languages.
Yeah,
I'm allowed to suck at Dutch.
Same.
So, man.
But the thing was, I also did like the typical Antiano thing where I started making everything smaller for a little while.
Absolutely.
Because I was like, yo, het huisje,
exactly.
het autootje,
exactly.
het stoeltje. I was like, no one's going to know.
I do the same thing with with meervoud, so it's de.
Yeah.
And then I just avoid being in a situation where I have to like choose.
Same.
And like, as much as I love my girlfriend, she has this thing where like, if I'm in the middle of a great story and I'm telling like this whole charade, and then I say, and then it was something, and she's like, het. Like, God damn it. Right in the middle.
Yeah,
So,
I feel you.
So when you were able to do your master's in English...
Easy. Easy. A fraction of the effort, and I had only 8s and 9s, and it was just...
And was that a little bit like reconnecting with how you felt before you went studying in Dutch?
Yeah.
Was it the old you a little bit again?
Definitely.
Okay.
And that was just kind of like, wow, okay, I'm back, sunshine girl, back in the game. But also kind of having learned a lot. Like, I think that it was really valuable. It was a hard time, but it was very valuable for me to hit that brick wall.
Absolutely.
To also realize, like, listen, you're as flawed as everybody else, and that's totally okay. So I finished the master's, and I'm a dog with a bone. So I went back to the bachelor. I was like,
come on, take a hint, girl. Take a hint.
No, can you imagine?
Oh my God.
I was just like, but the thing was as well, was at that point, I was like, I don't really want to be a lawyer anymore, because I had worked in the field, and I had seen that it wasn't really my jam. Like, it's not what you see on TV.
No, it has to be for you.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, but I'll finish the bachelor, and maybe I'll work as a lawyer for like until I'm 40. And then 40 became 35, and then 35 became 30. And at that point I was 26, 27. And I was like, okay, so why are you doing this? But I still couldn't leave it. So I went back, but I made a deal with myself that if I started to feel bad again, any kind of depressed feelings at all, I had to quit. So, or if I failed even one exam, I had to quit. And so I went back, and my first exam period, I failed both my exams, and I was like, okay, done. So I cried like crazy, obviously, like deregistered that same day. But I had made another promise to myself, and here's where Australia comes in. I had made a promise that after I finished my studies, I would go on a gap year, because we don't really do that coming from Curacao.
Which we fucking should.
Which we should.
We absolutely should.
If you, again, like, I mean, of course it's a privilege to be able to do that, but if you are financially able to in any way, shape, or form, yes, 100% we should be trying to do that.
I so wish I took that opportunity when I had the chance.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I remember in my first year, there were people who were 19, so they were a year older than me, who had just started. And I'd be like, oh, so like, what is it? Like, ben je laatjarig or something? Like, whatever. And they're like, oh, no, ik heb een gap year gedaan. And I was
what the fuck is a gap year?
What's a gap year? And then they're like, oh, yeah, my parents let me, 18-year-old me, go to Asia alone. And I was like, what?
Look, I just always thought,
people be crazy.
I just always thought it was something that rich white people do.
Same.
And I was like, I'm not rich or white, so not going to be an option for me.
Exactly. I was like, but so they told me about it, and I was like, oh, it's a rich white people thing. Like, okay, like, ding, okay. And I kind of filed it away.
We don't say that with any racist connotation. It's just how it appears when you're a kid and you think, oh, well, I don't get a Porsche for my 16th birthday, so I can take a gap year. That's
exactly. And so, but then kind of over time, I heard more people do that kind of thing, and I was like, okay, well, obviously it costs money, but it doesn't have to cost so much money. And I did a bunch of research and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, so with like, I don't know, 5,000 euros, which was a lot of money to me still, I was like, but with 5,000 euros, which in the grand scheme of life is not that much, you can do that. So I was like, okay, when I finish my studies, I'm going to go do that. So all of a sudden, I graduated with my master's. Sure, okay, that's all cool and very proud and blah, blah, blah. But all of a sudden, I drop out of law school definitively, finally, for real. And I'm like, shit, now I got to go on the trip, you know?
You have to.
No, I have to, because I said I was gonna. So I just decided to start telling people. I just told people like, oh yeah, I'm going on a trip in like half a year. And I went to my boss and I was like, listen, so that was at the trust company where I was part-time. And I was like, listen, I am going on this trip. That means that per direct, because I was also like, I quit school yesterday. So per right now, I need more hours. I need to work full-time. And I think at the time I had said September, and this was in December. So a bit more than half a year. So I was like, in September, I will leave, and I will leave you as an employer. And he was like, okay, cool. So I started working full time. September turned into November, and it was going to be a half-year trip, 5 months in Southeast Asia, and 1 month, 4.5 months Southeast Asia, a month and a half Australia. So I was like, all right, cool. And all this stuff, like gave up my apartment, like crazy, just throwing everything upside down.
All these
and I
radical
left.
moves.
Yeah, and it was really nice because it felt like for the first time I was making really radical moves, but it also kind of felt like I was very aware that for the first time I was making decisions for myself. And it was a weird realization because I was like, oh, damn. So that means all these years, without realizing it, I've been making decisions for other people. And that's quite confronting.
Absolutely. I can imagine.
But so I went, and the half-year trip turned into a year because pretty much the moment I arrived, I met people who I did not go there with a lot of money. And I met people who were there with even less money and who had bigger, longer plans, or who were telling me how much money they had. And they're like, yeah, I've been out here for a year. And I was like, huh? How? Like, how are you doing it? And you learn all these little things like how you can volunteer at a hostel for free accommodation, stuff like that. And that's how you extend your trip. And so at that point, I was like, well, why would I've always wanted to go to Australia. Why would I go there for a month and a half, living like a super limited kind of existence and traveling with a very limited budget, when I can go there and do a working holiday visa where I can work, earn money, and, support myself there. So, yeah.
Just have a better experience.
I did that, yeah. And I worked for 4 months on a farm. Yeah, it was so cool. It was
Farming what?
Bananas and papayas.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was there on the farm every day, wake up at 5, in the bus at 5:30, 8 to 9 hours of packing. So the girls pack the fruit, the boys go out into the field and get it. And yeah,
that's some gangster shit.
it was so sick, like massive spiders in the papayas and shit. And I'm terrified of spiders, but
Blimey, that's a big spider.
dude, it was snakes. Like you find, because
I mean, it is Australia.
it was just.
I'm surprised the papayas don't have teeth.
It was wild. It was just so cool, so cool, and so that all happened and was brilliant. And then I came back in December, so almost a year ago, because I wanted a bit of a break because I was feeling, travel is awesome, but I'm a very sensitive person and I make friendships very easily, but I make very deep friendships very easily. And so one thing about traveling that's tiring is that you're constantly emotionally investing in these new people and constantly having to say goodbye. And so I had like a romantic relationship out there and had to say bye. I had like met all these new best friends and had to say bye. And I was just at a certain point, I was like, I cannot take the achy, breaky heart anymore.
That shit's heartbreaking, girl. I know. I'm the same way as you.
I was like, this is too much. So I decided to come back, take a little break, and be here, see all my friends, see my family, blah, blah, blah. And then in October, I was going to go back to Australia. So a month and a bit ago. And I came back and I was looking for a job. And it's so wild because in all of this, so while I was traveling, I rediscovered my passion for writing. And that's when it dawned on me where I was like, this is what you should have been doing all along. Like, what? So I was like, I've been writing my first book and all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, awesome. I'm going to go and like be a writer. And I get back to Amsterdam and I'm looking for a job. And what do? I take that old job back at the trust company because they offered it to me and because it's good money and because
you're a glutton for punishment.
And because I'm apparently such a glutton for punishment. And so I went back and Corona happened. So everything was kind of going sideways with my plans anyway. And I was like, okay, but if I'm going to be here for so much longer, do I want to work at this place that makes me miserable and bored and is like sucking all of my energy and breaking my soul? Yeah. No. And then came the stuff where my boss is quite my former boss is quite a misogynistic, like, I mean, he's a middle-aged white man who's very stuck in his like privileged ways. Yeah. And so he started talking to me about Black Lives Matter all the time.
It's always funny when like, I think everyone should talk about it and feel able to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes it's like those people who have such firm opinions. You would think that rich white old folks would be the ones be like, I might be wrong about this, so let me be open-minded, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. Is like I don't have a problem with talking about it, because I think the only way that we all learn stuff is if we talk and ask questions and stuff like that. So in that regard, even though sometimes it's exhausting, I'm an open book. But he wasn't trying to talk to learn. He was trying to talk to always tell me that in Holland there's no racism. Ugh. And like stallion niet so aan and all that stuff, you know?
Don't say that shit to me, dude.
Yeah. And
I hate that. Dear white people, saying stallion niet aan is like top of the list and the shittiest things you can say to a person.
Yeah, like way to gaslight, you know? Like, and I've always known in the previous years that I worked there, I knew he was like that, but I was able to kind of push it aside. But during my travels, one of the things that I learned was how to assert my own boundaries a lot better, kind of because I had to, and because I met people who made me need to kind of learn that and practice that. So my bullshit tolerance is just a lot lower. So yeah, that's how I ultimately then, and also I also just kind of found myself thinking like, why are you doing this? You know that the legal career is not what you want anymore. Why would you come back to this office? What are you doing? And then on top of that, now you're listening to some homie trying to tell you that racism ain't a thing. And when I experience it all the time, I know that it's a thing. Like, you do not need to
preach to the choir, girl.
Yeah, like, so that's kind of how I ended up. I blew my top off and I was like, I quit. And I put it in my resignation letter too. I was like, these are the reasons I am quitting.
Good.
Because I was like,
put it on paper, make it heard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then of course we had like all these intense conversations where he was like, I didn't realize, blah, blah, blah. But obviously it was him trying to have his like last word and I was having none of it. And so, yeah, I handed in my resignation, left, was trying to find different jobs. And even as I was job searching, I was like, again, why are you doing this? Like, you're only doing this because you feel like that's what you should be doing. But the things in the past years that have brought me the most joy and that have fulfilled my life the most have been the things that other people see as being illogical. Quitting law school after putting in 5 years. Giving up an apartment in Amsterdam that was affordable to go to...
Are you out of your mind?
Exactly. To go to Australia and all these places. Quitting a job during a pandemic to then not find another job and decide, I'm going to be self-employed. Like, these are not logical things. But
well, it depends who's sitting across the table, because to me, it's completely logical.
But that's because you're an entrepreneur. So you make those similar decisions.
Absolutely. And like, when I hear you speak about it, all I can feel is proud of you, because who wants to settle for the exact same repetitive copy of everyone else's actions?
Yeah.
And as much as I know you from back then, that ain't you, girl.
No.
Of course you're gonna like be self-employed. Of course you're gonna write a book. Of course you're gonna do pubs. Like, that's vanzelfsprekend to me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I completely understand.
Yeah. I think that it just took a lot of time for me to let go of those expectations of what I should have been, because I am intelligent. I know that. Like, I did well. Like I said, I did well in school and blah, blah. And the expectation of me was, you go and you become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, because those are the things that we see as standards of success.
But did that pressure also come from upbringing and from home and from growing up, or is it more internalized?
I think it's a combination of both. My parents always said, we support you no matter what. But
it would be nice if you were a doctor.
Exactly. There was that kind of like...
Look, we love you. We accept you no matter what you want to do. But, you know...
But maybe being a lawyer would be the smartest choice, you know? And those subtle nudges, I do think that you internalize those. And they do become quite big and quite telling of the choices that you make.
And it starts to kind of shape an identity that you think you're supposed to latch on to. And identity is like... Even me, like, listening to that event you had last.
Yeah.
And it's very insightful to approach identity from that way. And in telling the story now, you've often mentioned that asking the question, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why do I feel obligated to?
Yeah.
What's this inner like struggle between something I need to do or something I want to do?
Yeah.
And how did that come about? Like, make you realize that it's an identity issue?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that so the reason that I find it tough to tell any segment of the story without telling the whole story is because they are all so intertwined. And so I think that like my identity was shaped across the islands. And I think on our islands, we have also these quite traditional kind of expectations of what we're supposed to do, what gender roles are, but also what the career expectations are, da 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 da. And then you come to Holland and those things shift. And you start to ask yourself whether the kind of concept of your identity that you have, whether that is good, whether it's enough, whether it needs to grow potentially. And then you start kind of doing that. So that was kind of my development here. And then I went abroad and met all these people from all these places doing completely different things and doing things that, again, to me, coming from my background and coming from our expectations of career or identity or whatever, seemed outlandish and crazy. But they're really happy and they're making it work. And then that kind of influenced my identity again, where I was like, oh, but again, it brings up those why questions of like, well, why is my identity like this? Why do I see myself as, I don't know, a serious career-driven woman? Why can't I see myself as a creative and yet also career-driven woman? So yeah, I think that it all these different events and these experiences really shape your identity and transform it, which has just been it's been a ride, but imagine. A really great ride.
Because if you said that, for example, with your previous employer, that you had to lock horns a few times, like the last thing I would ever call you was confrontational.
Yeah.
So that I can imagine that was also a bit of a wake-up call to be like either, wow, I do have tough skin, or I'm actually a lot less of a pushover, or I take a lot less shit than I thought I did.
Yeah. And that's been a journey too, because I love identity because it's so complicated. Because my identity as being always happy is also very linked to always being agreeable.
Oh.
But that means that there's certain situations that I look back on where I'm like agreeing to that thing or not making an issue or not making a fuss. Was that because I actually wanted to not make a fuss, or am I not making a fuss because I'm the sunshine, happy, agreeable girl? And that is also super confronting and very, very interesting, but very complicated. And so I think that for me, the distance of being so far away from everybody that I knew and meeting all these new people in like a rapid kind of tempo, and kind of having to set those boundaries made that I was like, okay, I am agreeable, but I can also be feisty, and I'm allowed to be feisty. Like if I meet a traveler who wants to like travel with me for another week and I just don't like them because they give me a bad vibe, bad juju, whatever, I'm allowed to say no thanks. But I find that really hard because for me that links into, oh, but then you're not being agreeable, you're not being nice. And I always wanted to be the nice girl. But I can still be polite and nice about it while telling you to go away. You know?
But giving into it and letting it happen is not being nice to yourself.
Exactly. So that, and I think that was a very interesting process as well of figuring out like, okay, the fact that I can stand my ground and be confrontational or just stand up for myself or whatever does not mean that I am no longer a nice person. Those two things can coexist and that's okay. And that meant that for the first time, but it was hard, like standing up to my employer. And that's also why I put it in my resignation letter, was because I was afraid I was going to chicken out. Where I was like, if I put it in the letter, because I wrote, I said that we have different normen and waarden.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Stings.
Poke him with that one.
Stings. Yeah. And I was like, if I put that in there, then obviously a conversation will come out of that, because he's going to want to be like, huh, what do you mean? And then I have to explain. But if I just say, hey, I quit, and he comes up to me and goes, why? I will end up coming up with an excuse, and I'll say, oh, I just I found something else, or I don't know what. I'll chicken out. So this was my way of kind of holding myself accountable to the things that I learned along the way, which was you have to learn to stand up for yourself, and you have to know that that is totally okay, and that doesn't make you a bad person or a not nice girl anymore.
And
yeah, it's interesting.
And was that kind of like the last drop that made you realize that you can take a pretty drastic change in life, because you went from working the more corporate life to pretty much the opposite of being self-employed?
Yeah.
Was that the last straw that broke the camel's back, or?
Definitely. And it's funny because I already knew that was, I'd been saying for years that I wanted to work for myself, that I wanted to own something for myself. I wanted to build something that was mine. I just never knew what that was. And as I figured out, it all started very innocently, where I set up a blog for my travels because it seemed like the easiest way to keep people up to date. And then as I wrote more and more, and people DM'd me being like, oh, or like even Insta stories where I'd share a little story of me just talking shit. And people would DM me and say like, oh, this really resonates for me. I thought that I was the only one who ever felt imposter syndrome or just icks, whatever the thing is that I'm talking about. And I was like, oh, apparently I'm saying stuff that's kind of valuable. So that's super nice. And that kind of grew into this, okay, so should you not maybe just write? And is that not just going to be your business? And let that grow in whatever form it takes, So I knew that in the back of my head, but it's just fear. It's just fear of wanting to accept and jump into this thing that is so kind of unexpected and not as stable. And then I don't know, pandemic and all this stuff, and it's like asshole boss, and I was like, why am I just go then? Just jump. Just jump
in both feet.
Just jump.
Head first.
Jump both feet and you'll figure it out. So yeah. And since then, I mean, it's been 2 and a bit months since I've been officially self-employed and figuring this all out. And I've learned a lot really quickly. And
Trial by fire, man.
The public speaking thing is one of them as well, where I've always known that I like to talk. I love telling stories. My friends actually sometimes
which as everyone listening can hear, she's pretty good at. So carry on.
Sometimes my friends are like, "Can you just shut up, please?" I'm like, "No."
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that,
the two of us are kletskos.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that was when I kind of this year I also realized like, oh well, can't I turn that into something? And then it's funny, as soon as you open yourself up to it, all of a sudden stuff pops up.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, toevallig, this opportunity popped up to register, to apply for this little speaker's position at this organization called Creative Mornings, which I love. I've attended their events before, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. I'm so scared. Literally, at 11, the deadline was midnight. At 11 o'clock at night, I hadn't applied because I had convinced myself that they aren't going to choose me anyway, and who am I? 11 at night, I was like, why are you doing this? Like, apply.
Just fucking do it.
Almost the middle of the night, I recorded my quick video, sent it. A week and a half later, they chose me. So I did that. It was awesome. But that was from the comfort of my bedroom, like on Zoom, which was... I find that quite tricky to like connect with people via a computer. Ugh. But okay, I had fun. And then I was like, oh, cool. I can pursue the public speaking thing. Blah, blah. Maybe I should just start calling myself a public speaker too. And then, boom, came the opportunity to apply for TEDx Amsterdam Women.
Which I think you should have won.
And I was like, oh my God, Nicole, apply, you know? And then...
I think you did great.
Thank you.
I love listening to it.
Thank you. It was so fun. And it was so nice because that was like on location. So there were people in the room. The people were us speakers and like the team, obviously the organization and the jury. But that was super nice to see for myself that, okay, when I'm standing on a stage and I'm looking at humans, I can do this.
Yeah, you did great.
Yeah.
You started with a question. You had attention, the interest. You nailed it.
I mean, I agree. And that is so liberating to say, right? That I look back at it and I'm like, I walked off the stage and I was like, I fucking nailed it.
Yep.
Like, I did that shit. And I look at the video now and I'm like, yeah. I mean, brilliant. Really, I'm so proud of that.
Update bio, public speaker.
Yeah, but it's so, you learn so quickly all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, I feel like I still do it. I think too much in formal education. I didn't dare call myself a writer because I did not go study literature, or I am not a journalist. But what about the fact that I've written 1 million essays over all these years of studying? You know, what about the fact that I write for myself, a journal? I've been writing for about 15 years for myself. I just never shared it. But isn't that also writing? Isn't that also perfecting your craft?
Absolutely.
And public speaking. I was like, oh yeah, but you can't say you're a public speaker because you've never done it before. What about all the moot courts that I had to prepare for? Pretending to be talking to the judge, presentations at university. Like,
that's
don't those
literally
things,
public speaking.
That's literally public speaking. Like, why are you so afraid? We're so afraid to call ourselves something.
To own it.
And to own it.
Yeah.
And now in like 2.5 months, I've realized like, oh yeah, I can own the writer thing, but also I'm a good proofreader. Like, I did editing and stuff at university too. I was on the board of a journal. Why are you so afraid to allow yourself to own that you are also good at editing text?
Because when you think about it, a lot of people who are successful in certain fields, there's enough of a split between people who have actually gotten there through education, traditional means, and people who have gotten there pure out of relentless effort.
Yeah.
And maybe misplaced but justified arrogance in the beginning. It's like
guts.
A piece of paper doesn't make you who you are.
Yeah.
Like your effort, your choices decide what you can call yourself.
Yeah.
And same as entrepreneur. Like that's the thing I have now. Like anyone calls entrepreneur. You can register the KVK.
Yeah.
You're entrepreneur. But it's a difference between if you consider yourself entrepreneur when you have a business or when you've made impact or when you have clients or when you've made money or if you break even. But whatever you need to do to make sure that you can keep making the steps, just own it.
Yeah.
Own the shit and run with it. Run like hell.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that's already popping up now because I'm like, oh, I don't really have clients yet. Struggles. And then those thoughts will pop up all the time. Like a couple times a week, I'm like, oh, I'm not a writer at all.
You need it for sanity. You need it to keep you grounded.
Exactly. And I'll like have a little cry because I'm, like I said, I'm sensitive. I cry and stuff when I feel sad. And so I'll have
if you cry right now, I'm going to cry. Don't make me cry on my own camera. Stop it, crying.
I'll have like a little cry at home. And then I'm like, okay, you know, today's an imposter syndrome day. Fine. Cry or do whatever. And then after that, tomorrow, get back to it. Because you are a writer, you are a proofreader, and goddamn, you are a public speaker. So just go.
Preach.
Just do it. And it's been a ride.
So, specifically now that the start of your new career, like you owning what you are, what's the area in which you focus? Like, what's the thing you like to speak about the most? What's the thing you want to help clients with? Yeah. So, anyone listening, like, what's the core of that then?
Inclusivity. 100%.
Okay. An important topic in this world right now.
Yeah. So inclusivity for me is it's so big, and it's something that we're in so many different ways, it feels overwhelming to start learning about. And I think for me, like, okay, I'm a person of color, so obviously I've got opinions about that and experiences. I'm also queer. Like I actually, that was something like a month ago or so was International Coming Out Day. And like I hadn't actually really publicly, like I hate the term coming out. Like,
I read your post.
Aware.
I read your post.
Like,
I loved it.
I love that. Like just,
yeah.
I'm just me, man. But
ain't no closet around me.
Ain't no closet. But this is something like literally last year was my first non-hetero relationship. That was the first time ever. And I was like, oh, damn, like, what does this mean for my identity? And I was like, well, it just means that I love people, you know? That's pretty sick. That's pretty cool.
You like what you like. You love what you love.
Exactly. But how valuable is it for me, being someone who likes to talk about stuff and is very open, how valuable is it for me to share that story and in that way to contribute to the creation of space for more queer people? So that's something that is near and dear to my heart. And then, you know, gender roles. Like, okay, I'm a person of color. I'm a woman. What is it like for me to live in a world where women are still struggling in many, many big, significant ways? What have my struggles been with that? You know, that is where expectations also come from, right? Where for me as a woman, it's like, oh, but you're going to be a writer. Like, oh, you're not going to be successful. Like, oh, but there's so many men who would do that. And it would be like, oh yeah, like,
cool, write
good luck.
Book.
Cool.
Yeah.
Write a book. And gender identity is also something that I have been learning a lot about. And that's one that I am, that I definitely want to help contribute to bridging the gap, because gender identity and gender norms are something that I've also shied away from. I spent quite some years being a bit afraid of saying that I'm a feminist or of whatever, because of the fear of being not only an angry woman of color, but now also an angry queer woman of color. And it's, you know, like people will be like,
trifecta.
Yeah, they're like, oh, angry lesbian. And it's like, I just have opinions, you know?
Of course you're upset.
Of course you're upset about something. And I just think that there's so much more to all these things. And there's so much that we're afraid to learn because we're afraid to ask questions. My current partner is non-binary, so I have had a steep learning curve with all kinds of stuff that has me questioning, like, how much space do we create for each other in this world? How inclusive are we actually, each one of us individually? How many things do I say that could leave someone else feeling left out or not seen or whatever? So yeah, inclusivity is my jam. I'm very passionate about it. I think it's all very interesting.
Because it's also so new. It's still developing and changing. It's still being introduced. There's still enough people who have never even thought about the fact that it has to be spoken of.
Yeah.
So it's so new still.
Yeah. And it's habitual, right? Like now with my partner, I see how much of our language is gendered, where, like, okay, the NS has done a great job, like beste reizigers instead of dames en heren.
Nice.
Super cool. But that's the recorded thing. But when the conducteur themselves says something, they will usually say dames en heren. And it never dawned on me before that could be shitty for someone in the train. It never, and now I hear those things, or like when the two of us are walking around outside and someone will say like, hoi dames, or something like that. I'm like, no, you know, it just...
Hello, individuals.
And like, I understand because it's a politeness thing, you know? You don't say, a lot of people feel like saying hello mensen is rude or cold or whatever. So I get it. But it's just interesting to recognize it and to see what are the things in my use of language that I can change and how can I contribute. And in that regard, like it goes, it's so broad. Like I said, like I was on the board of a law journal here in Utrecht for a while, and one of our board members was in a wheelchair, and they put us every single year. They put us in offices that were not wheelchair accessible, And these are simple, basic things
Like
where
if a wheelchair isn't the obvious visual cue, then I don't know what the fuck you need to see.
Exactly. And it's just, I think that for me, inclusivity, like I'm a very empathetic person. And for me, inclusivity just comes down to empathy. Like, let's just try to be empathetic and kind to one another, but I understand that you can only recognize that certain things you say are potentially not kind or are potentially excluding someone if you learn about it.
Yeah.
Which is a process. Like, again, gender identity, like they, them pronouns. I didn't want to explore that for years because I was like, it's complicated. Like, I pushed it away.
Delicate topic.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, but I don't know anyone anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And it's like, well, that's not the point. You don't know anyone now, but maybe you will later. And now here I am several years later in this relationship. And I'm like, yeah, if I had met you several years ago and I would have refused to say they, them, or been insensitive in some way, I would have found that quite a shame. I would have felt bad about that. And now I'm trying to be better.
That's great because I feel like I personally have a lot to learn about that as well, in which I'm happy I can now ask you about it.
Yeah.
Because I feel so double about it on one side. On one side, I believe that every single person should feel 100% accepted, welcome, included in everything. Whether I don't give a shit what you are, how you look, what you're shaped. I don't even care how you care to phrase it. If you have a soul, you deserve everything equals everyone else.
Yeah.
On the other side, my island side kind of comes in, and it's more of like we're very tough, resilient people. It shouldn't matter what the world does to you. It only matters what you do for yourself.
Yeah.
So that other side, which I'm definitely learning to like keep to myself because it's part of who I think I am. I believe that no matter what people think of me or what they call me or how they look at me, it doesn't change shit about how I look at myself. I'm always going to be me.
Yeah.
And it's also a little bit of, I would really want for other people to have that toughness. Just accept and love yourself enough. It doesn't matter what is being said or so. Like it's two sided the same coin where like I would hate for anyone to not feel included or not feel welcome, especially since I have a fitness company. My whole business is for people to feel welcome in my location, in my gym.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to have people from all walks of life, of all gender identifications and everything. So I'm really happy that we feel included there. I've actually had conversations with people who came in, a guy who experienced like really bad, had a really bad gym experience in a Fit for Free, and said, because he said, well, people can tell that I'm obviously gay, so then I definitely didn't like working out there because how I was looked at, everything. And I was like, and he planned in a talk with me just to bring it up to see if that's okay. And I told him, man, the fact that you have to mention that already breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what you like, who you, as long as you're a good person, you don't break my shit and you get a great workout, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So he felt like he had to announce that and give a heads up of like in my previous gym, I didn't feel comfortable because and he said, because I'm obviously gay. I'm like, why obviously? Like, and I was so happy that he signed up, became a member, he had a great experience, and he's still a member now.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's just, I don't give a shit. As long as you don't commit crimes and hurt people, I don't give a fuck. And when you're two consenting adults, do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
Like I say, the freakier the better. Let's go. And the other side said, like, come on, people, like love yourself, be tough, like fuck people's opinions. So it's really hard.
I think the thing about the resilience thing, though, like I totally see where you're coming from, because I've had that same kind of internal dialogue where I'm like, oh, just toughen up, Nicole. But I think that that's also very interesting considering where we come from, because white people haven't been taught to be resilient, but we have. I think that is definitely a kind of conviction that a lot of people of color and Black people have, is we need to be so resilient. But what if the world could just not be so mean?
Yeah.
So I find it really interesting that you say that, because yes, I've definitely had the same things like geared towards myself where I'm like, oh, just be tougher about it, just don't care what people say. But I find it very interesting to also ask myself, well, where does that expectation of myself come from that I have to be resilient? You know, like when I don't know, if nowadays, if you're talking to someone, a white person who is pro Zwarte Piet, and you're telling them like, yeah, but we think you should change Zwarte Piet, and they're like all upset about it. We could also say to them like, yeah, you should be more resilient, like just deal with the change and accept it. But we don't really say that to them because that's not the kind of dialogue that you have with white people. It's really historically been geared towards us.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. And as
Like,
far as like the
clear,
actual like being resilient, I think it's just tough. Like sometimes it's really tiring. Like even for me, I had an experience in Australia where someone was telling me, and it's like, I would say like top 3 most traumatizing experiences of my life, where someone was telling me how I was going to hell for being like gay. And I was just like,
wow.
Well, you know, like what do I...
Like in the middle of a cocktail party, we have a good time. Like, by the way...
like that shit is heavy, you
What a
know?
mood breaker.
And you kind of leave that and you're like, oh, but it's like I'll toughen up, like tougher skin. But those moments, they do carry a lot of weight. And I think that if there are some basic small things that we can change that mean that other people don't have to be resilient to like whatever, then that's already great, you know?
True,
and
absolutely.
we're not going to change the whole world. The whole world is never going to turn into a place where no one is getting their feelings hurt ever. So yes, resilience comes with humanity because we can just be kind of tough on each other sometimes.
People
but
suck.
I think
People
it's finding a balance between the two.
I agree, because I think like being accommodating and being empathetic it should be like a basic human trait. Like if anyone comes to your home, your first aim should be like, let me make sure person's comfortable, fed, has something to drink, has warm feet, you know. That should be like the basic things.
Yeah.
And when I say like to be tough, it's not so much in the sense of a person should change and be that or have that forced upon them. Mm-hmm. It's just maybe because of how I've been raised or how I am. It's so natural for me to just be like, well, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it, but it has zero effect on how I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And the problem with this world is that with social media and everything, everyone has a really easy channel in which to communicate their opinion.
Yeah.
And everyone has a right to their opinion, but they forget that as much right as you have to have an opinion, I have a much right as to ignore your opinion.
Yeah.
I don't have to take your opinion into consideration.
Yeah.
Especially when it's about yourself.
Social media can be scary in that
right?
regard. Yeah.
And like, I feel for myself, I have to love myself enough, respect myself enough to not let certain things affect me. Or like let it just only be superficial.
Yeah.
And so that's where that toughness comes from. Like, so what if someone like thinks this of me?
Thinks I'm
like,
going to hell.
Yeah, and I always say like this too shall pass, you know. In a year, it won't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why for me, like I really struggle with it. So when I encounter someone who I feel like I should be a little bit more sensitive for, I always try to like take a step back. Okay, don't be myself, because being myself isn't being accommodating for that person. It's not serving that person's comfort. But I still have a lot to learn because I don't have that many people in my environment who I can do that for example.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think it's also, though, do be yourself, but like be accommodating in your way, whatever way you can, because I don't think that it should be about like kind of putting up a facade or anything like, you know, you never want to do that. And I think one way of kind of inclusivity wise, learning how to do these things and kind of practicing is accepting that you're going to mess up. And in that way, I think you bring a very human yourself part to it, but the intention is there. And I think that speaks volumes, you know, like we talk about that all the time. Like at home about, at home in Amsterdam, about the intention. Yeah. That as long as you say to someone like, hey, this and that is something that I would like you to be considerate of, or for example, these are my pronouns or whatever. If they're trying and you genuinely see they're trying, then it's fine.
Yeah.
And if they mess up 100 times, fine, no problem. But if they respond with a no, that's too complicated, or like I can't do that.
Yeah, the dismissiveness.
The
that's disrespectful.
is what's so shitty.
Yeah, which then again, now you mentioned say it that way, that's the exact same way I feel about the whole Zwarte Piet thing. That when people say, het is toch een kinderfeest, niet zo aanstellen. It's so dismissive. You're saying the discomfort and pain that people feel is so unimportant that it can be brushed off with, just pull it together.
That you're not even going to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. So, in that sense, I can completely understand that. Like, for example, I hope person's in mind, but we have a client in the gym who is biologically a man but identifies as a woman. Mm-hmm. And she's such a lovely person. Absolutely. I just like it when she shows up because it's just fun. Yeah. And I'm proud that a person who is who identifies as a woman but biologically a man feels comfortable in my gym. Yeah. Because we have people who are like slinging 300 kilo weights around, and we have big dudes, and so even then someone can still feel comfortable in my gym. Yeah. But it's not always obvious for all my employees or for the other customers in the gym. So when she comes in, I'm hoping that people don't accidentally say stuff like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man?" or something like that. Oh yeah. So I'm always like a little bit on edge, like, please don't do anything to make this person not feel comfortable. Yeah. And so it's definitely like a learning process, because I also don't want to be upset with people if they do get it wrong. Yeah. But also would really hate for the person to have any sense of discomfort. Yeah. Because it's already a difficult thing that people are going through. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's such a new thing, and people have a lot to learn, and I have a lot to learn. So yeah. And my parents always taught me, if you're just always happy and kind to everyone, you're never gonna be piss anyone off anyway. So that's all good. So that's like my baseline. I'll hug everyone. I'll high five everyone. I'll listen and talk to anyone. I'll be as sweet and kind to anyone, because I don't give a shit who you are, what you look like. Fucking, you can be a peg-legged green alien, and to me, you'll still be homie to me. So yeah,
and I think for me, communication as well. Like, I think we're so afraid to, we're so afraid to mess up. We're so afraid to broach the topic at all. Yeah. So I think one great way to make sure that she feels comfortable is, once in a blue moon, ask her if she's comfortable. Ask her if there's anything that you can do to like make her more comfortable. If there's ever anything that's popping up or whatever that she feels like isn't accommodating her or whatever. And usually I feel like people appreciate that. Yeah, they appreciate you having thought about it at all. So I think that's a great way to sort of handle and approach these things. So I've become much more open and honest in my communication, which has been only valuable. It's only a plus, right?
Yeah, it seems like maybe not a talent, but a skill to just make you a better human being in general. Yeah. So the more adept you are to having that conversation and like being open to it, is just a good human trait to have in general. So.
Yeah. And on that note, I do want to say one thing. So here we go. So in a description like this, referring to the biological like makeup by most people is not prettig.
God damn it.
Totally okay. I've done exactly the same thing. I did the same thing only like several months ago, where I had made a friend on my travels, a trans woman. So that's what trans woman.
God damn it.
But so that was
come on, Daryl.
No, but I totally get it. Like I had
no idea that was the proper way. Okay.
Yeah. Because the thing is that the feelings of being trans, and I don't want to step into this territory too much because I am not a trans person, so I cannot speak specifically to that experience. But what I have learned from trans people is it's not so much what is happening on my body biologically, so much as it is, what is the gender that I've been assigned at birth? So you say like assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Because that is what society says, okay, you have these and those parts, which means I'm assigning you as female at birth, for example. But the person's actual identity, the way they actually feel is, no, I am the other thing. So in this case, she's a woman.
Absolutely.
And the biological parts, blah, blah, all has no bearing on it whatsoever. So what I have learned is the most inclusive way to refer to a trans person is to say like trans man, trans woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I made the same mistake. Like I wrote a blog post about my friend in like May, and I had said the same thing where I exactly the same where I said like biologically male, now female, something like that. And I was alerted to the fact that, oh, that's not really
Probably
what you want to say. Yeah. So, but I can understand, just goes to show, right? There's so much language that we need to learn and that we need to figure out. And it can feel so overwhelming. But I think that, again, it's just keeping open that honest communication and being okay with making mistakes and being open to being corrected as well. Because
I believe also that for me, because how you explain it, that's exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah.
So, like the body, especially for me, I work in fitness, and so I have to also help people understand that people who are overweight, like there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
The weight you carry on your body doesn't make you who you are.
Yeah.
So for me, who you are on the inside is all that matters.
Yeah.
But not knowing the right wording or what makes a person feel respected in that sense is indeed, I think, something a lot of people will have to be confronted with. And then I'm happy I'm the kind of person that I only have to make a mistake once.
Yeah.
And then I can learn from it.
Yeah.
And I also feel that the least we can do to make someone feel comfortable in a world that's already oh so shitty is just accommodate them in what they need to feel exactly the same way as you feel in this world.
Yeah.
And that counts for trans people, for queer people, for people of different cultures, different races.
Yeah.
The least we can do is like make that minimal amount of effort to just be like, oh, would you rather me say this? No problem. I'm going to end up calling you homie anyway. So
that's the thing too, though, is another thing that can make it feel complicated is people are different, right?
Yeah.
So there are people who, for example, there are people who would label me as being bisexual, and I did embrace that as my like label for a little bit, and then at some point I was like, well, I don't know that really feels like how I feel, because I just like love people in general. So now I
like you.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'm queer or something. In that same way, there's maybe trans women who are like, well, I prefer that you just say woman. Don't say trans because I'm just a woman, full stop. And so there's so many different ways based on also what each individual feels the most comfortable with. And that just, again, speaks to the fact that we are all going to keep like messing up all the time. I'm sure that, that there's maybe something even I've said today that someone will be like, well, I disagree with her.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, it's different.
But I mean, I guess effort is what counts.
Super valid. Yeah. And yeah, we're always allowed to, I think, reach out to each other and say like, oh, well, I actually see it differently. Which is why I also say to people like, always DM me for whatever. If I post something or I say something and you're like, I have an issue with that, then DM me. I'm very slow with replying usually, but I always get to it ultimately. And I think that's a great way for me to also continue learning and like showing up as my best self in everything that I do.
Because I think there's a lot of things we can do in society in the macro sense, as in making jobs and environments accessible for everyone. And then there's the effort in the micro sense, the little things just per person, respecting whatever they prefer, and making that small adjustment to accommodate them. I mean, it's the least we can fucking do. So it really shouldn't be a problem that people are set in their ways.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complicated world. Some people, I've had conversations with people would say like, because everything else in the world is already so difficult, I'm going to focus on that. Yeah. And I'm not going to care about the rest.
Yeah.
Which it's hard to not try and understand that.
Yeah, from
People-
a place of self-preservation, I get it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like my brain's exploding.
Yep.
Like, this is too much.
It's literally a societal minefield.
Yeah.
Like you could be
Yeah.
trying to say everything right and still step on the wrong one and be like, damn.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, so close, so close. But
This has been
I get
really
the
enlightening,
intention.
though. Like,
yeah.
I think for me also it's important to have that perspective and know that it's important sometimes to slow it down, take an extra second to consider, and then make a choice. I of course always hope that my baseline of just be nice to every single person. My rule is
a great baseline,
if
right?
you don't commit crimes and you don't hurt a person, then
Yeah.
I have no reason not to be nice to you.
Exactly.
I don't give a shit who you are, what you look like, what you identify as. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be nice
Yeah.
because it's so easy for me to be nice, and it costs me too much energy to be mean or to be racist or to be
Yeah.
judgmental. It costs me energy that I don't want to
Being
spend.
mean is so exhausting.
Fuck,
I can't
unbelievable.
do it.
I can't do it.
Being mad at people is so exhausting.
I just rather hug and smile at everyone, and then my
Yeah.
life is so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also interesting, like, for us coming from the islands as well, like, I feel like the learning curve for me has been quite high because in Curacao, I feel like we were not typically pushing those boundaries. We were not talking about
No.
homosexuality or about this or that. We
Almost
kind
at
of-
all. Like at school,
anything.
nothing.
We sweep all these things under the rug. And in that regard, I think that living in Holland has definitely broadened those horizons for me. And that's something that I do take home with me, and that I do, talk to my parents about. And, like when I was home last was last year in December, and there were certain things being said at the dinner table. I was like, do you guys realize that this is quite discriminatory to that group? Like, do you realize that this is not a nice way to talk about this group? And it's like, oh, well, it's just our language. And I'm like, nah. And I'm like, okay, but we can change our language. We can practice that. And my hope is that in Curacao as well, I would love to do some projects and stuff in Curacao.
I was just gonna say that's somewhere that needs a
God.
lot of.
Dream. So that is definitely something I'm working towards in the future. I'd love to give back in some way, and to also contribute to the creation of safe spaces for younger people who are still living on the island, or actually people of all ages, I suppose, but especially younger people, because when you're discovering these parts of your identity, it can be so hard and it can feel so lonely.
Yeah, you're more in a more fragile state in life too. So
Yeah.
you can't be independent. So
Exactly. So I think that would be really great, is to see Curacao going in that direction where ultimately we have those safe spaces. And also homohuwelijk is still not allowed there. So
which is the
let's
silliest
get that
thing to
done.
have to worry about.
It's so wild. It's so
Unbelievable.
wild. Which makes me just want to get that shit changed and go get married then there to spite the system. It's just ugh.
Here goes your the old you again.
Yeah.
Like, what did you say I can't do?
What?
Like, excuse me.
Yeah. So
Well, this
Definitely
has
dreams.
been exactly the talk I wanted to be, because it's not a subject that I get to talk about very often,
yeah.
because I'm a straight man,
Yeah.
and it's weird to say, but I'm a proudly straight man because I love my woman.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
She
So
seems awesome. I've never met her, but
she's the best. So
you gushed about her
Yeah.
enough for me to be like, oh, she seems cool.
it's hard not to be proud of
Yeah.
who I am.
Yeah, of course.
But I really want to at least feel considerate enough to have information and talk to people and know that anyone, I could hug anyone and it'll be okay, So
yeah.
So thank you very much for
And I think
helping.
you do that well, huh? I do want to say that. We kind of talked about that before starting the recording, was the good old days of parties and stuff, and
yeah.
coming to you guys' house and all just hanging out. And I have always felt like you are a safe space as a human. You are just, as you said, you step into things just with this baseline of, I'm just going to be nice. That's the basic level that you always operate from. And I think that alone is so valuable, because there's a lot of people that don't do that. So I do want to say that
Oh, thank
I have
you.
love for you.
Stop it, girl. Shit, you're gonna make me blush, fuck up my
Shit.
makeup, and do this, boo boo. Yeah, because like true kindness is such an undervalued like talent nowadays.
Yeah.
So for me, it would just be much easier. Everyone would just be kind. Just start from kindness and let everything else follow. Just assume everyone is just not there to fuck you over.
Yeah.
No one's trying to take away from you.
Yeah.
Assume that I can win without you having to lose.
It's not a pie.
Exactly. It's not a pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Do you see how easy an hour and 50 minutes can go by?
Oh my God, we're already there.
Yeah,
huh?
that's how long
I was already thinking. I was like,
and we didn't even like cover some topics I wanted to talk about.
Really?
So that means I get to invite you again for part 2.
Heyo.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So tell the people where they can follow you, where they can like follow your journey, and where they can hook up with you.
Yeah, that basically Instagram, Nicole Römer, just stuck together. NICOLEROMER. Boom, that's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
And if any people have any business inquiries, can they also contact you?
Yeah, my website is kind of under construction, so just send me a DM and we'll go from there.
You're still fresh in the game, so you have a lot of time to
I'm still a
shine on those spots.
baby businesswoman.
Yeah. Well, I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
From what I know, from just knowing you and our conversation today, I have no doubt that you're going to be creating a lot of important impact in areas that need it. So
thank you.
If I can give you one advice from one entrepreneur to another, just be relentless as a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Just go. Fucking, like, I always use the term, like, step on the throat.
Yeah.
Like, metaphorically. Don't be violent. But just, hey, push your heels straight into that jugular and go, girl. Just fucking...
Yeah. Dog with a bone.
Exactly. All gas, no break. Go, go, go. And before you know it, you're not going to even remember when it was difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
And
it's going to be fun.
Use that smile of yours as a fucking weapon. Because... you have contagious like smile, so use that. If that's not your get a client card, I don't know what's gonna be. Thank you very, very much, guys. Please go follow Nicole, follow her journey, go support her, show her that love. Thank you guys for watching. This was a long one, but for a beautiful reason. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of really interesting guests lined up. I'm going to invite Nicole again for part 2 because we didn't even get to talk about Curacao that much.
I know.
This is the first podcast where like there was such an interesting story that we didn't even talk about the islands. But
I
islands
did think about that. I was like, oopsie.
So we're definitely going to get to that. So I hope you guys enjoy. Follow me on Instagram. You can either follow the Instagram for the podcast itself, or you can follow my own Instagram to see what I do on the regular. And thanks a lot. This was great. You're a natural.
Woohoo.
See? You guys hear what I said about that voice? Nice and sultry. You got like a feminine James Earl Jones thing going on.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, Totolika. Totolika.
Brakaput, May. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoy, and see you in the next one.